Welcome to the next session at the World Future Studies Federation 25th World Conference. This session is starting at 12 noon. We'll be going for a little less than an hour, and our focus is 5 decades of future studies, lessons from 50 years of PhD dissertations. I want to point out that the slides you see on the screen, you may want to take a picture of this one because in the top left, there's a URL. If you were to click during the session or after the session, you would get a PDF copy of the slides. And this would be probably very helpful because we're going to take a little time to discuss things twice during this 50-minute session. And going back and forward to the slides may help you with your discussion partners. I want to recognize this session would not be possible without a grant from Prince Mohammed bin Fahd University, given a year and a half ago for almost a 2-year study, as well as the Federation backed this study grant of strengthening the PhD in future research. And you say, well, how does that relate to future studies? The quality of our research enhances the quality of our study of the future and the formal study or informal of the future. And so what I'll be doing here is in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the WFSF, this session explores insights gained from 5 decades of PhD dissertations. The study examined 110 future-focused dissertations, doctoral dissertations completed since 1972 across diverse disciplines through a panel review process. The results of the study identified 21 dissertations as exemplary across 4 key areas: epistemology, theory, methods, and practice. The session offers criteria for excellence for graduate students, if you're in a PhD or considering it, or as well as faculty, deans, and others wanting to see what excellence is related to their graduating students in the terminal degree. And so I'm going to just roll through the paper, which will later be published. In describing the study, I had a postdoc working with me on it. I was the principal investigator, but we'll cover the problem, the methods, the results, and the 5 lessons learned. Discussion. You'll have discussion yourself at the end of number 2, and then at the end of number 4, because I want to hear back from you, your thoughts on in what way can the quality PhD strengthen academic futures entering maybe mid-career a service within the university context, or obviously research externally, but our focus today is academic futurists. So problem, background, research questions. So you see here the Federation, 50 years was dedicated and started for future study. Many of you can perhaps see recognize some of these luminaries. They're pictured, and there was a great start in 1972. In the very charter of the Federation, not only its middle name, Future Studies, was its purpose is to support high quality innovation education throughout the world. Now, the issue here is that in 1975, the SIBA Foundation gathered 22 academics from the Middle East, Europe, the Americas, from diverse places and disciplines such as genetics, psychology, sociology, economics, to answer this question: is the future an academic discipline? I have their book on my shelf of what they published. And despite this promising focus, which has continued to be asked and developed in developing future studies programs in universities, but also in academic journals, advancing our field, future studies remains on the outside of higher education. The door has not swung open to future studies like it might have had to leadership or innovation. Why is that so? Despite a network of academic futurists, the number of programs teaching is at the post-secondary level has remained just incremental at best. Graduate level programs started only be phased out. Is the problem the lack of disciplinary rigor in future-focused PhDs? We might pinpoint many variables: student enrollment, school department support, a number of things. But what role does the PhD play in preparing faculty that can serve schools in other disciplines, not just future studies academic disciplines? And what does the PhD tell us about that if we're looking at a collection the last 50 years? So with that problem statement, I'm your principal investigator in the study. I'm an associate professor of Doctor of Strategic Leadership. It has a foresight concentration. I'm an assistant dean at the dean level across the university in online learning. My PhD was in organizational leadership. Dion's foresight styles assessment, factor analyzing it. My research and service is that I conducted a 2015 Delphi of consulting futurists, looking out to 2030 worldwide on foresight professionals. I founding member of APF and the chair for 3 years, developed and co-developed with Andy and others the foresight competency model, and then was in the start from the beginning with Eric and Luke on developing the council, program accreditation council. So here's the research questions. This study asked this question: how might a sample of future-focused PhD dissertations be described in view of their breadth and depth? Number two, what would be appropriate criteria to recognize exemplary future-focused PhD dissertations within these clusters? And then three, kind of our terminal question, so what? How might doctoral work in future studies be strengthened to prepare new PhDs to take up productive roles as academic futurists? So let's dive in here to the sample, the design, and the instrument methods. You're looking at probably 1/2 of those dissertations. Yeah, it's small print, but you can download the top of that left. Those that just come in, there's a link there you could photograph and download the PDF slides there. But you're looking at that next page, a Google Docs page of, I think, 66 dissertations are mentioned there, and you can appreciate how you might gather a sample of 50 years. It's a lot of pick and shovel. We of course went to ProQuest. We went to the Federation listserv. We started in 2016, actually, putting calls out. It was renewed in 2021 and 2022. I feel we've got maybe anywhere between 40 and 60%. How about that? Playing both sides of the extent of future focused dissertations. And so it may not be a comprehensive population, but we have a sample that might tell us something. Now, normally when you think about the literature and doing meta reviews, you would look in the peer-reviewed journals, Futures, Foresight, Foresight Science, and journals like that. But this is many times before these futurists academically as scholars. This is their best and first work. What does that tell us about, obviously, the discipline, the field, but what does it tell about their readiness to engage others within the university with collegiality and sharing? So here's the sample. I'm going to run through this quickly. You have the slides so you can study them later. But our sample, as you can see, was, I think, 23%. Does that say that? maybe a female. That was the sample. I can't read the full small print. Okay, 27% female. That's better. Our sample and nationality was American, 45 dissertations, Australian, about 13. You can see others, Finnish and Turkish. Our excuse me, this is languages. The slide isn't complete here, but languages was English, 110%, 105, Spanish, Persian, Portuguese, Italian, and German. Our by nationality, by publication date. This is interesting. What happened in the 1970s? And as we're looking at this, 12% of the sample was from the 7% from the 70s, 8% from the 80s, 11% from the 90s, 26% from the aughts, in 2010, 36%, and then 12% since 2020. That last segment will grow over the next 8 years, because it'll fill in more. So, but that's the present state in 2022. All right. All right. Dissertations by institutions. You're seeing some familiar institutions that you represent, others, but note up top, the percentage, other universities, 53.45%. That means future focused dissertations, more than half come from programs that are not exclusively teaching foresight 24/7. And that's encouraging to see PhD studies at this quality level. Here's by dissertations by degree earned: political science, 17%, management sciences, 34%, education, 15%, philosophy, 3%, future studies, 7%, system engineering, 2%. By future methods, you can see here different signals here. Turning my chair. Scenarios, 25%, not applicable, 35%. That means a future focused dissertation would not necessarily need to illustrate and utilize future methods. Over a third of these PhD dissertations did not utilize future methods to push the horizon back and do futures research. But you can see images of the future, 10, Delphi 10, action research, 4%, causal layer, 6%. Dissertation by data sources, archival 45, interviews 30, observations 25. It could be empirical or otherwise. Now here's an interesting, quantitative 10%, mixed 23%, quant and qual, but qualitative 67%. Dissertations by unit of analysis, the greatest being society, 49.6, organizations, almost 30, individuals, almost 21, unit of analysis. And then dissertations by theoretical paradigm. All you know of Inyatala and the work he's done in this threefold structure. We took these three classifications and rated dissertations by this. And you can see in the red, 52.6% predictive empirical. That means they're working from a focus on what will emerge in the future, what's probable, what's possible, and using empiricism and post-positivism even. Critical post-structural, 8%. That would be a dissertation theory base of Marx, Freud, Foucault, more deconstruction, let's say, to problemize reality and life. Cultural interpretive, almost 40%. That does deconstruct, but it continues the conversation to change it. And that you can see 40% extraordinary. Now, this is an interesting thing. How do those approaches change over time? If you look at the midpoint of the decade lines, the dashes, you can kind of see where all these lie. So you have in the 1970s, the dash, you had cultural interpretive, probably 4 dissertations, predictive empirical, maybe 3, maybe one or so critical post-structural. And you come here, you can see the rise of cultural interpretive in the 90s and particularly the 2000s. And then this drop off is really, I think, it's not as significant because the next decade starts and probably didn't pick up that there. But that's very interesting. Well, you've looked at the sample, and so now I want you to talk to your colleague. It could be a partner next to you. It could be two others. I don't want to see five people talking, but I'll give you a little bit of time, about that much time, to ask this question: how might a sample of future-focused PhD dissertations be described in view of their breadth and depth? Yeah. Say hello. I came to this session because what I just learned maybe fit. What I just saw doesn't fit because of, right? This sample may not be any good. Okay, go ahead and chat them on yourselves, and those on the web, you're welcome to viewing online to type in comments and questions. Turn to your neighbor. I'm going to give you some time to interact a bit over this subject, and then I'll get some feedback as we come back together. Be about 3 to 4 minutes. Go ahead and chat with a partner right near you. All right. I'm glad to see that we're chatting away and you've gotten your hands a bit about around this. Love to get feedback afterwards of where you think this converged or diverged from what you've seen and what you've done in terms of your work. Let me just make a comment here about the how the study was done. I sat down with my postdoc. We created a dissertation worksheet. You can see some of the elements there. In the sample, you saw a lot of these items come up that you can see here: data sources, unit of analysis, theoretical paradigm, contribution to future studies. Here's an example of how Thomas Chermak's worksheet, we did this on Google Docs and then we just turned it into spreadsheets so we could compare, contrast. But human resource management, working on a theory of strategic planning, was scenario planning contributing to it, particularly in terms of employee engagement and outcomes. And so it was a classical predictive empirical theory testing dissertation with the hopes to build theory in not what's the future going to be, but the processes of employing foresight within the organizational space and contributing to organizational science. So, all right. So if you're watching this on online or you just come in the session, take a picture of this screen and note the URL on the top left. The slides today are there. You can download now or after the session. Let's talk about results. So what did this, so what? You know, what difference does it make? Well, you know, I think if you were starting a PhD, you'd want to know what exemplary PhDs were in the fields that you're focused on. And also, if you're supervising a doctoral chair or a committee member, you'd want to know, or maybe you're teaching and you're wanting to do a graduate seminar on good exemplary dissertations within a certain space. So we started off and I told my postdoc, gosh, let's find the top 10 dissertations over 50 years. That was a little idealistic. Now, there are, of course, when you do meta reviews, there's always criteria: justification of the study, quality, the data analysis, relevance. And that might work well for if you're a department chair and you got 10 dissertations each year, you have to choose one and they're all different subfields, and you might choose one with a faculty vote. But we needed something more. And what we came up with, I'm going to explain to you now. That's that we classified these dissertations based on their contribution to foresight knowledge. In other words, rather than taking the whole sample as a one collection to choose individually among them, in fact, at the end of our first stage of our classification, we identified 21 exemplary dissertations, but I couldn't tell you why one got in and one didn't, other than the subjective rating of me and my postdoc, right? But we sort of agreed. But we said, no, we need to do more. And so when we resorted according to clusters, within clusters, I think about 14 of those 21 reappeared, but others emerged. But that was where we settled in. So let me explain this to you. Epistemology, 6 dissertations were selected. Now, every dissertation needs to be epistemologically aware, but here were 6 we felt were outstanding over 50 years that helped that were leading indicators and substantial in, what is real, what is object subjects, the whole discussion of ontology and epistemology. 23 in theories related to theory building and testing within disciplines. 44 in methods, that's using a futures method, showing it in use, expanding on the method, the lessons learned, recommending future research on methods or new methods, science fiction, prototyping, speculation, right there. And then practice, 37. That's a case study showing the use of futuring within organizations, networks, institutions, and highlighting futures practice. That's not just methods, but they might have used some methods, but it tilted that way. So even though theories or methods and practice might be some awareness of epistemology, the bulk of their dissertations, we put them in the columns we felt that were there. So what you're looking at here then is our 4 buckets, 21 dissertations placed in 4 clusters. I'm going to show you the clusters now, all right? And I'm going to be brief because I want us to talk again in about 20 minutes. But epistemology, these dissertations placed here focus on questions of epistemology, ontology. They call for reconsideration of how future studies relates to research paradigms, whether positivism on one end, pragmatism the other, in between is critical realism and interpretism. And so these dissertations deserve honorable mention, all right, for study of PhD candidates and other faculty development. All right, number 1, Richard Slaughter, Introducing Critical Futures, an Approach to Studying the Future. Slaughter broke with the predictive empirical at that time. He evaluated curriculum in Wales and England. He laid out why we need to have critical perspectives on the future and bring it into a conversation in a post predictive context. Inyatala, I mentioned him already, understanding Sakar, epistemic boundaries, critical commentaries on comparative analysis. And he laid out the whole basis of which we classified and his influence from the cultural interpretive school, not critical post-structural, has carried on with meta history and pillars and everything else. Gidley, Evolving Education, a post-formal integral planetary gaze at evolution of consciousness. And so the entire integral and the planetary epistemologies and cosmologies of living systems and integral thinking and acting for the planet and beyond is there. And then Kusa, toward the dynamic paradigm, a third paradigm that could handle complex problems with multiple phases, multiple methods. The first paradigm was prediction, ancient. Second paradigm being modern, predictive. The third paradigm be dynamic, complex, multiple methods, and of course, messy, but yet learning as we go. So these are the epistemological exemplars. I feel like I'm handing out awards. Thank you very much, Slaughter, Yatala, Gidley, and Kosa. We will remember you and we'll study you, right? And you have. Okay, theory exemplars. Dissertations here undertook the traditional task of normal science to contribute to theory testing or development within a respective discipline. And so here's the dissertations there. Chermak, 2003, a theory of scenario planning related to organizational sciences. 2, Vanderlyn, 2010, foresight, competence, and strategic thinking of strategy level leaders. Very critical. He did a structural equation modeling with, I think it was strategic foresight styles assessment, strategic thinking, and then it went to decision making, and Wade followed up. I did the foresight styles assessment. Luke put it in structural equation modeling, and Wade improved it and applied it in a major way. But a first-class example of theory building relating foresight to decision making, but less so, more aspirational and not as rational. So that I think I caught it there, Wade. Help me, right? Okay. Rohrbeck, corporate foresight toward a maturity model. Now, if Landerlin was looking at strategy level leaders individually, Rohrbeck was looking at the organizational level of organizations versus individuals. And then Amnestus, managerial foresight, firm performance, creating an assessment tool of managerial foresight, and then using it to test against firm performance. Excellent study. And this last one, 2020 Breathless Race for Breathing Space, Analytical Future Studies, Contested Coevolution of Privacy, Imaginaries, and Institutions. So excellent theory exemplars, something we need more of in our field if we're going to influence our discipline homes. Okay, methods. Dissertations here are utilize future methods to generate useful knowledge for stakeholders regarding probable, possible, preferable, preventable outcomes among populations and institutions. So, Bezold, 1976, Strategic Policy Assessment, Congressional Reform, the Future in Committee. It was scenarios on policy related to Congress, the U.S. Congress, and in the start of policy aspirational scenarios that later Bezold developed later. But it was an exemplar use of scenario methods in policy. Van der Graaf, 2008, Future Research in Logistics Mobility Scenarios for 2025. Note that 13 horizon. He tested and showed in methods how a real-time Delphi could be utilized and validated for academic research as well as for industry research, and then later went on to produce, I think, 20 PhDs after him in that field. Very significant methods exemplar. Candy, 2010, The Futures of Everyday Life, Politics and Design of Scenarios. Candy introduces what we now know as experiential futuring, and he galvanized it, and now we all do it at facilitators and otherwise. And Rayford, large-scale participatory future systems, comparison future study of online scenario planning approaches. How do you engage the public? How do you engage stakeholders across large, weak networks and pull together a collective intelligence to understand uncertainties? Excellent exemplar. All right, practice dissertations. Dissertations placed here used participatory action research that highlighted how foresight was being diffused or adopted by a specific community of practice. And so here you have wheelwrights, 2005, personal futures, applying futures and foresight to personal early career or pre-career career planning. And it was a very pragmatic, hands-on manual that was just a good example of how flexible and how applicable futuring can be even to persons that know nothing of our field. Hayward, from individuals to social foresight, the realm of learning from the future and out of the Swinburne context, excellent exemplar of there and related to integral thinking. Candy, The Futures in Everyday Life, The Politics of Design. Did I get that right? It sounds like I didn't, but that might be that might be Sweeney, right? What, you guys know Sweeney? The Futures, it's his dissertation, not Candy's. I think Candy's was the one before. Let me confirm that here. Yeah, that's Sweeney there and his dissertation. It's not Candy on exemplars. So it's Sweeney and with a different title. Then Gordon, Adaptive versus Visionary Advocacy Approaches and Scenario Planning Implications of Contrasting Purposes and Constraint Conditions. And so Gordon, in a sense, practiced and showed that scenarios can be, of course, aspirational, visionary, but they can also be adaptive, the institution or the firm's response. He showed typologies through leading workshops and seminars and reflecting back on a case study. So, well, there you have it. Okay, here's Sweeney. I think just cut Candy there. Playing with geoengineered futures, cogitations on scenarios, politics, and post-normal potentialities. And this is, of course, a geoengineering related, not just to energy, but planetary realities and playing and mixing politics, power, and potential in a postmodern context. So, okay, there's the dissertations in 4 clusters. Let me ask you, let me see if this slide cues you up. No, let me just ask you to take a moment to talk about what did you glean from this study so far? And what do you think about the 4 clusters? And how should this study, where could it be useful in your practice? So go ahead and chat again with those you came in from. I want to say those that are watching the web, the slides are top left, tinyurl.com/5.decades if you need to reference it later. And I will likely turn this in for a review of publication maybe in December when I get a little time off of this semester. So go ahead and chat. I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll come back together to learn about the results of the study, and I'll take questions at that time. All right, let's come together as a group and see what we've learned and where we need to go. Um, I want to share now with this study. I'd like to share with you the lessons that I learned, um, and I think you could take away different lessons. I'm acceptable with that. I'm going to read this just to be as yeah. That's great. That's good. I'm going to read this just because I'd like to be a little more concise than I've been before here. But the final research question of the study was, how might doctoral work and future studies be strengthened to prepare new PhDs to take up productive roles as academic futurists? Very little literature exists on the formation and deployment of academic futurists within higher education. This is likely due to small population of Foresight graduate programs. Nevertheless, the major threshold for the formation of an academic futurist is their PhD process. And given this study evaluated PhDs over 5 decades, what lessons does this study offer us who want to see better academic futures leading better Foresight graduate programs? So first, number one, seeking a unified top 10 of PhD dissertation and future studies over the past 50 years proved to be problematic. There were just too many unique works, such as the ideation for future cruise ships, 2022, or Ritker's 2003, the role of the future of work and work motivation. It was a banquet. that was a full buffet. It's tough to rank something like a top 10. Second, this study found that it had to view future-focused PhDs by clusters, by epistemology, theory, methods, or practice. Most doctoral programs of future studies prepare their candidates in at least one or two of these clusters. Comparing dissertations by their cluster rather than general standards align more how future-focused PhDs are currently written. Third, if future studies wishes to see greater advances in higher education, particularly within disciplinary fields, it must guide more of its doctoral candidates to produce dissertations that would fit this study's theory cluster. The study showed that only 20% of the sample used mid-range analysis to relate Foresight constructs to existing theory within their college discipline. Similarly, Shoemaker, 2021, a senior scholar in uncertainty studies, noted that qualitative Foresight approaches such as scenario planning suffer from a lack of grounding in organizational sciences. Now, these calls for rigor related to theory building have been echoed by Fergani and Chermak, 2021, taken up by Munch and Grok, 2021, who based a bibliographic analysis of peer-reviewed literature in future studies. The last 50 years identified a lack of theoretical foundations in future studies compared to other disciplines. 4, while not all PhD students should be trained in theory, testing, and building statistics, they should at least let me just read it here. Why not all earn their dissertation under Foresight doctorate and stresses the role for problems from critical realism to build discipline theory. All PhD students should be trained to read peer-reviewed journals that use, let's say, multiple regression, factor analysis, structural equation modeling. The best doctoral formation would call candidates to view human problems and possibilities from different research postures, as illustrated by Menelaukas' 2018 explanation of the research onion related to methods of cross-positivism, realism, interpretism, and pragmatic approaches. I sent my dissertation in 2008 to a leading Foresight practitioner and scholar. I asked him for feedback. He says, "This looks great, but I didn't understand any of the statistics." Well, let's not have that, right? And let's have more people using methods that are appropriate in certain fields so we can communicate across the disciplines. The better trained someone is in research design, and particularly in using regression analysis and beyond structure and all that, the better they're going to be able to communicate with their colleagues in their college and their schools to appreciate the value of Foresight and future studies. So, and fifth, finally, this study demonstrated the lesson that epistemology-based PhDs are rare. Only 5% of the study sample had but was in that bucket, but have added enormous value to foresight knowledge. At the very least, every PhD dissertation needs to be epistemologically aware. All right, I've shared my study with you. Let me turn it over to you now. And that was the question you just did. You talk to each other at this time to answer this question. And you're welcome to also make comments on the caliber of the study or ask me questions at third point. Wade, take that mic and turn it on and give it to the gentleman sitting in the third row back who's raising his hand. And comment or question, I'll take a comment right here. Introduce yourself and
yeah, okay, so Christophe Bisson, so thank you very much for your presentation. As I told you, based on the keywords you use, you get some results, you dive into the database, and obviously it's more Anglo-Saxon focus, and you miss some parts regarding the French, the German, the Chinese, etc. And also, if I may add a little word about AI, I think that's very important nowadays to be AI savvy, but that's only my humble suggestion.
Excellent comment and well needed. So I summarize that this was a sample of a sample in the Anglophile world. Good critique. And I'd love for people to take this further. Thank you. Other comments, questions from this side? What do your group, you want to report on what your group thought? No, question 3, how might doctoral work in future studies be strengthened to prepare new PhDs? Comments, questions? All right, questions for me? All right, let me ask, how many of you found this session useful at one level? Okay, I'm seeing about half the hands. Now it's about 80% of the hands. I think 90%. It's been a privilege talking to you. I'm going to do something that you may not find very often at the Federation meeting. I'm going to end before the end time right now. So 10 minutes.
If I just may say something, Jay, the collective of all the information you submitted today, I think it's my first time to see all of this in one paper. So I really look forward to see the paper.
Oh,
when it's released.
You'll see it. You'll see it. We'll be in the literature, right? You'll find it. Hopefully, 6 months, a year, 18 months. You never know how long it takes. Yeah.
Site is serious. It's a serious field. So, for example, in my case, when I did my PhD, I think that it's very important because people have to know that foresight is serious. It's a serious field. You have theories, you have methods, you have procedures. So I think that our role, like academics, is very important because people have to know that you can explore the future, you can study the future, you can create the future, you can materialize the future. Okay. So PhD studies help people to know that. That we are a serious and important field in the world, and that we can have an impact in private and in public sectors. Yeah. So I think that this kind of works is very, very important.
Good. Thank you for that. My friends, it's lunchtime. It's about 8 minutes to 1. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.